Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. First AWS and Bridgecrew modernization workshop. So we're all super excited to be here, seeing people piling in from India, from Nigeria, from Barbados. So thank you very much for joining us. We have a couple of people from AWS here today to make our lives super easy. So I'd like to welcome Rob and Yaniv. Rob and Yaniv are going to be providing us with the infrastructure, things like AWS accounts and Cloud9 IDE to make this workshop run really smoothly, so we don't need any local dependencies installed, so we don't need to care whether you're Windows or Mac, or everything should just kind of run flawlessly on the Bridgecrew platform, web pages, GitHub for our source control, and then the AWS Cloud9 IDE for everything else. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Rob and he'll fill us in on the rest.
Thanks, Matt. Rob Melka here. I'm with the AWS Partner Network, and I help partners through their partner journey, based out of Seattle, Washington. And Yaniv is also a teammate of mine. Yaniv?
Yeah, I'll be in the background here in this workshop, helping you, facilitating. If anyone has trouble with access or anything, just feel free to use the chat feature. And I'll be there to support you in that particular problem that you're facing. So without further ado, Rob, I think we should hand out the AWS accounts.
Excellent. So to get us started, I will share my screen and walk us through what we're having a look at here. And let me know if you can see my screen in the chat.
Yep, all good.
Looks good.
Excellent. So to get us started, I'm going to drop a link here for us to set up our AWS environment. And basically, before we get started with the prereqs, just some housekeeping items. We definitely encourage you to keep some open tabs, separate tabs, so you can navigate between the different screens. Open a note-taking app. This will help you take any notes as part of this modernization workshop, and also ask questions. Yaniv will be moderating, and we'll get to your questions as quickly as possible. Additionally, Event Engine will be accessible until tomorrow, the same time, so about 24 hours. So if you're falling behind, feel free to catch up later on. All right, without further ado, let's get started. Let me just share with you my, let's see here. Chat.
Yeah, I shared the link, Rob. Don't worry about that. You can just go and demonstrate.
Okay, excellent. So we're opening up the bit.ly link, and here we're going to go ahead and enter our name, and I'm just going to call it Bridgecrew Workshop.
Rob, I think that we can see the other
not
screen.
Seeing your screen, yeah.
Yeah, we're only seeing the browser tab.
You're only seeing the browser tab?
Okay. Like an empty Chrome browser. Maybe you have it set up using another browser window.
Okay, yeah, I can see it now. So I put in the bit.ly link, enter your name, and then you'll be given a link like this, and this will take you to the Event Engine dashboard. And from here, you'll be able to accept the terms and log in. So this will basically give you access to the modernization workshop, which will give you access to an AWS account. And from here, we want to click on the AWS console button. And then from here, we have options to leverage the console or extract the credentials to work locally. But we're going to be going to the console, and The first step here is to make sure that we're in US West 2, as this workshop operates in that region. And as you can see here at the top right, I am in the US West 2 Oregon region. Please let us know if you have any issues accessing your AWS environment. And yeah, once we're in our AWS account, we're going to go ahead and set up our developer environment. As Matt mentioned, we're not running this locally, but you could definitely run this locally. The biggest thing that we're trying to address and what we're going to be addressing this with will be Cloud9, which is our cloud-based IDE, where you can basically start running your code from your browser, allowing us to, start projects quickly, like this one, and it definitely makes things easier and less cumbersome. Like we all are familiar with running locally, you have lots of troubleshooting you need to do, installing plugins and so on. So Cloud9 takes care of that for you. So we click on Cloud9, and then we're going to go ahead and click on the Create Environment button. And then for a name, we're going to go ahead and title it Bridgecrew Workshop, if I can spell. And you can leave the description blank. And then for our configuration settings, we have a couple of options. So with environment settings, you have different environment types depending on your needs. The default selection here is to create a new EC2 instance for your environment. So this is basically managed, but you do have other options like creating a new non-ingress. Basically, you can have an outbound connection, but ingress connections to the EC2 instance of your Cloud9 environment are basically, they're not there. Additionally, you have an option to create and run a remote server. And that's if you want to run your own EC2 instance. So these are the different options. We're going to leave it with create a new EC2 instance for your environment. And then for your instance type, we have a couple of options, but for the sake of this workshop, we're going to go ahead and select the T3 medium instance type. And we can go ahead and leave the rest of the options default. But you do have a couple of options in terms of the platform and configuring your network settings, which you can also do. So once you're done with that, we'll click on Next, and then click on Create Environment. And our environment should be ready to use momentarily. And yes, please feel free to let us know if you have any trouble setting up your Cloud9 environment, and if you have any questions as it relates to Cloud9.
Yeah, just to reiterate there, thanks, Rob. Anyone having issues, we have people on hand in the background to answer any kinds of questions. So if you have a question that you want to have discussed on this workshop, please do use the Q&A. If you're running into any technical issue, please just send a message in the chat function to the panelists, and we'll be able to assist.
Yeah, thank you for that, Matt. And just additional insight around Cloud9, one of the benefits, the various benefits, is that you're able to collaborate with your teammates, and you're also able to deploy serverless applications from Cloud9. So that integration is definitely a plus. And yeah, right now we have our environment set up. Let's go ahead and increase the font here, right? Okay, let's see here. Font size. And is this visible to everyone here? Okay, trying to increase this text size. Okay, so essentially what we're trying to do here is we're gonna go ahead and set up the Bridgecrew environment, pre-Bridgecrew environment. We're just gonna initiate, we're gonna do a quick setup and install JQ, which allows us to query JSON data. And we're just going to copy this. You can copy it like this, but a good note here is to leverage the copy button on the right of this box. And once you copy it, it copies it to the clipboard, and we can go ahead and paste that. And that should be installed shortly. And select Y. And then we're going to go ahead and copy the next commands to initiate our Python environment. So we'll copy, we're just going to use the copy button here. And then we'll paste it. And there, we've also activated it. And now we're in our virtual environment here, Python environment. So our next steps here, as shown in the modernization workshop steps. If you're listening to this on the recording, you can leverage your own AWS account or run this locally as well. So you definitely have options for that. So these steps are outlined here using your own account, and then you can create your workspace from there. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Matt, who will be walking us through the Bridgecrew setup. Matt?
Thanks, Rob. That's absolutely fantastic. So what we now end up with is this pre-configured environment that we should all have, you know, that looks the same for all of us, so we can kind of crack on with the workshop. What I'll now do is I'll take exactly the same environment that Rob's just been setting up. And that's the great thing about these environments. They are shareable. So I'll take that environment from Rob and end up in exactly the same Cloud9 environment that he was just showing us all. So I'll give everyone just a couple of minutes to make sure that everyone's happy, everyone's got their Cloud9 environment set up, and everyone can see that kind of IDE. Let me just log into the console myself, and then I can share it, and we'll see if everyone's on the same page. Wonderful. If I just share my screen now, you can see that I'm logged into the same account with the Cloud9 IDE in Cloud9 that Rob just set up, and I'm just going to click on Open IDE. And we'll be right back to where we were and able to carry on with the workshop. So yeah, thanks again, Rob, Yaniv. Appreciate the AWS support here for this modernization workshop, and this makes things an awful lot easier. So the rest of the workshop setup, as Rob said, it's good to keep some tabs open. The next ones we will be needing are the account at bridgecrew.cloud. I've already created a new account in our Bridgecrew platform for this workshop. If you didn't get or didn't see the kind of email yesterday, head over to bridgecrew.cloud right now and just sign up for a free account because we'll be needing the API key straight from that to configure the pipeline. And then the workshop we'll be following along with, as Rob kind of said, there's nothing wrong with following along to the recording of this. All the steps we'll be taking are in the Bridgecrew AWS modernization workshop at bridgecrew.awsworkshop.io. And right now we're kind of on the Bridgecrew section of prerequisites. So sign up for the Bridgecrew account. You will also need a GitHub account. So if you don't have one of those, github.com is where we'll be kind of cloning a sample infrastructure repository to do the rest of the workshop. So we'll start here, and you'll have plenty of time to kind of quickly sign up for those because what we're about to do isn't particularly strenuous. So the next thing we're going to do in this Cloud9 environment, which is here, is we're going to install the Bridgecrew CLI to start things off with, and we'll get a real feel for what it is we're trying to achieve here. So if we go to our workshop, and again, bridgecrew.awsworkshop.io, we're on the Bridgecrew setup on 3.2. And what we're going to do, it's a standard Python module. So what we can do is pip install Bridgecrew. And please do let me know, anyone, if you're struggling to see the text or anything like that. And please do shout out to the panelists, again, if there's any issue. If you're following on a recording or remotely, you should find everything you need in the workshop guide. So if we do a sudo pip install Bridgecrew, this will give us the Bridgecrew CLI in our Cloud9 IDE. There we go. So that's installed. So now what we have is the Bridgecrew command, and we can do -- help, and we see a load of options there for kind of doing local security scans against any infrastructure as code repos that we have available locally. I'm just going to close this one down for now and go back to here. Wonderful. The next thing we're going to need is the Bridgecrew API token. So like I said, you're going to need a bridgecrew.cloud account, sign up for free. And once you have that, we're going to go like the GIF or GIF, depending on how you want to say it, shows. We can go to the Bridgecrew dashboard. We can go to integrations right down at the bottom. And in here, there's an API token option. And that will give you your personal API token that we can use for this workshop. And so what you will need to do is you'll need to write that down somewhere, as we're going to use that very, very shortly. So keep a note of that token from that page, or just leave that page open in a tab for when you come to need it. And so what we're going to do now, we have all the prerequisites set up. What we're going to do is we're going to introduce a Git repository hosted online on GitHub called CFN-Goat. And CFN-Goat is designed to highlight the vulnerabilities that may exist in infrastructure as code. So in CloudFormation, you can define all of your infrastructure. You can define what instances you want to build, what S3 buckets. It's quite a expressive language. You can have loops and statements and all kinds of clever things to basically codify everything you need to build in your AWS environment. And to kind of highlight the reason why it's important to check infrastructure as code of any type, be it CloudFormation, be it Terraform, be it serverless framework, we've created these GOAT style projects. So if we go to and you don't have to follow along with this, but I'll just show you here. If we go to the CFN goat repo, you'll see the whole point of this particular goat, if you will, is it's purposely vulnerable for training and learning and kind of, doing workshops just like this. So what we've taken is a set of CloudFormation, and we've written it to be as insecure as possible. So if there are any security guidelines saying that you shouldn't do something, we've done it just to really kind of highlight, insecurity. So you'll see here we have some kind of access keys stored as source control in the EC2 instance. Further down, we'll see subnets with things open to the entire web. We'll see S3 buckets that have no encryption enabled or have public access or have some kind of IAM policies which grant more permissions than they really need to. So this is the repo we'll be using, and this is meant to emulate any infrastructure as code repository you are using in your environment. So if you're deploying via infrastructure as code, you will have a repository with your production or your dev or your env environments in, pardon me. And we're going to be using CFN goat so that you don't have to tie any of these pipeline or tie any of this workshop stuff into your kind of production or dev or env. We can keep it all separate, hence the event engine. And we can kind of use this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the CFN goat section 4.1. And all we're going to do into our IDE is we're going to take a local copy of CFN goat from GitHub using the git clone command, and then we're going to change directory into that new repo. And as you can see, everything we had on GitHub, we now have locally. So that large vulnerable CloudFormation is now here locally on the machine. And what we can now do with that is we can show you a simple local scan. So remember that Bridgecrew command that we just pip installed. And this is where we will need the API key. So the Bridgecrew command allows us to do a couple of things. It first of all allows us to do a really simple local only scan. So if we just take the first part of this command, bridgecrew-f cfngoat.yaml, you'll notice in our IDE, we have a file in our CFN goat repo called cfngoat.yaml. Now, if I run that with just -f, you will say it immediately gives us any local issues found with that piece of CloudFormation. And that's the whole point of static analysis of infrastructure as code. In a nutshell, what we're immediately getting is before these CloudFormation definitions become real objects, we can look through the state of them and go, that is going to create an insecure object, be it an EC2 VM, be it an S3 bucket. And the idea of this is to catch these issues before they become a problem in production or a problem in any cloud environment. Obviously, going on the AWS shared responsibility model, you as the user in any cloud environment have a responsibility to secure the components you are deploying. So we don't want, publicly writable buckets. We don't want secrets spilled. And static analysis allows us to catch these things early and really quickly in the developer toolchain. So what we'll see here is a lot of the built-in checks that Bridgecrew provides. So looking at whether buckets are enabled, whether logging's enabled, encryption, and feel free to have a play around with the Bridgecrew CLI at a later date. If we do Bridgecrew-list, you'll see all the built-in checks that we check for by default in the CLI. And as you can see, we've already got a good few hundred. Oops. I've got 508 built-in checks, so plenty to be going at. And then what we're basically doing here is a little bit of magic, and this is why we'll need this API key I was talking about earlier. What I'm going to do, and you can just replace this in the command sections with the API key that we have open here. But for ease, what I'm going to do is...
Hey, Matt, can you make your IDE window bigger?
I can certainly try. Yeah, let me close down that welcome. Let me bring that up here. Is that any better?
Excellent. Yeah, that should be
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. That's great. Let me just see if I can increase the font size as well a little bit.
Just go to the settings gear on the top right, where next to where it says share. Yeah, and click on that.
Oh, I think the preferences pane is.
Oh yeah, it's now underneath.
There we go.
Yeah.
Got it.
There's a user settings on the left side, like just above.
Got that.
And then if you scroll down, you would see font size, bit more. There we go. 18 is nice.
Look at that. That's beautiful.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Yaniv. Cheers.
Cool.
Hopefully makes it easy for people to see. I know that watching screen shares in Zoom isn't always the easiest thing to do. So there we go. Right, so what we're going to need that API key for, and I'm just going to, again, copy it from the tab I kept open. And I am basically going to export that. And I'm going to export that as the same name as we're using as this placeholder here, just so that I don't need to keep typing it in every time. You can happily kind of type this in if you want, or you can do exactly the same and just export this, your BC API key, which will mean if we just now run these commands here, that will get replaced by the variable. And so what this is going to do is exactly the same scan, but it's also going to send the results of the scan up to the Bridgecrew platform. And that stops us having to look through these on our terminal in a big long list of scrolling text. It gives us a load of extra information on those vulnerabilities, such as recommended fixes, information about the issue itself to give your developers context. And more to the point, it lets you track those issues over time and lets you and a set of team members that have access to that Bridgecrew account to be able to, as a team, go and look at remediating these. And we have some automated remediation that we're going to get to as well. So now that that's run, what we'll actually find is if we go back into our Bridgecrew account and we click on the incidents tab, everything that we have just said there, our CFN goat repo, all the violations that we've just seen in that scrolling text output are all here. And what we can do is we can either filter them by source. You'll see that because this is the Bridgecrew CFN goat repo, it's appeared here. If we had multiple repositories running via the Bridgecrew CLI, they'd be shown here. And we can also list them via severity. We can list them via which benchmarks you need to pass, CIS, PCI DSS, or categories such as IAM or monitoring or encryption. So this gives us a lot more power than we have. And also clicking on one of these, such as, I don't know, ensuring all data in the S3 bucket is securely encrypted at rest. If we click one of these buckets that's violating an issue, it actually shows us the component and actually gives us some recommendations, gives us a history of the error and other errors relating to this object as well. So we can kind of see where we're at with this particular definition, and also guidelines that help give us context on, for developers that maybe aren't aware, haven't been particularly in their security team or things like that. We get kind of that immediate, virtual security assistant that can help kind of give context to why these are an issue and why these changes shouldn't be made to any environment, let alone production. So in your own time, you can kind of go through this little section covering what we've talked about and also covering how you can have the Bridgecrew CLI only look for specific policies or skip specific policies if you know that they're not needed. And we've already covered lists. So just a quick summary of the Bridgecrew CLI there, and also of viewing the results in Bridgecrew, which we've just had a click through. If you're following along at home or you need any more time to kind of go back through that, the workshop is a lot more verbose, so we are going to be kind of covering it and then skipping pages. I just wanted to link you back to that so you know where it was. So by all means, let's take 30 seconds. Any questions from that? What we've just done there is show at the very basics a quick scan of your infrastructure of code. And we call this a static scan because that infrastructure as code is not yet real cloud artifacts. Like I said, it's not a real EC2 instance. We haven't run that CloudFormation. I didn't get that. But it allows us to, thanks Siri, but it allows us to check for security issues before we make those items. So that's all well and good, but realistically, you're not going to want to add more burden to your developers' workflow and lifecycle and kind of, hopefully the automation they've already got set up and running by asking people to run a Bridgecrew CLI every time they make a change or every time they kind of are about to commit some code. So what we're going to do in the next section is kind of show how we can take those principles and we can automate them using DevOps style CI/CD tools so that this happens for you automatically just every time you commit code and every time you're about to kind of make changes to your infrastructure as code repos. So what we're going to do here in a nutshell is we're going to take the CFNGoat repo and we're going to make a fork of that into your own GitHub so that you individually can make edits. After that, we are going to set up automation pipeline using AWS code build so that what we've just done and the upload to the Bridgecrew dashboard automatically happens. And then we're going to kind of show how we can use Bridgecrew in an automated fashion to get that data updated every time that change happens using those tools. So the first thing we're going to do, and again, shout if you have questions or discussion points, using Q&A, if you need assistance on where we're at, just because we're trying to fit a lot into this hour and a half. So if you're stuck anywhere, please do use the chat and Rob, Yanni, and Peyton will be able to get to you. But if you have questions to talk about around IAC security, the topics in general, by all means, use the Q&A. So what we're first going to do is we're going to send you all over to GitHub, and on page 5.1, if you've got the AWS workshop open at this link, you'll be able to just click directly to go to the CFNGoat repo. And logged in with your free github.com account, what we're going to do is we're going to click the fork button in the top right. And that's going to create a custom fork of that. So you're going to have your own version of the CFNGoat repo, which means you can integrate it with pipelines. You can, more importantly, make edits to it. So we're not all trying to work on the same one through this workshop. So you'll see now that it's forked from CFNGoat at Bridgecrew.io, but my GitHub username is MetaHuts, and I have my own fork of CFNGoat. Now what we're going to do is use our AWS environment. So not just for Cloud9, but we're also going to use code build to start automating that Bridgecrew CLI. So I am going to, let's try that a different way. I am going to there we go. Wanted to stay in the same session. So I have just basically opened a new tab, copied part of the bit before Cloud9 to get to the Amazon dashboard in a new tab. And what I'm now going to do is find code build in the Amazon search. There we go. And we're going to create a new build project. And obviously, you know, there's lots of CI/CD tools available. We're going to be using code build. Some people might be using GitHub, some people might be using Circle, you know, pick your favorite. But realistically, the point is we are able to use the DevOps tools we have available in the environment we have available to automate the running of that tool every time we make a change. And for that, code build and code pipeline in the AWS suite, since we're using AWS, since we're deploying on AWS, is perfect for what we're doing here. So if we go back to the workshop, we will see there are a load of instructions. And the first thing we're going to need is a little bit of direction from the Bridgecrew platform. So back in integrations, where we got our API key for running that CI command locally, you'll see we also have a host of integrations for other systems, including continuous integration. And so one of those is AWS Code Build. And if we click Add Subscription in here, this is going to give us a set of instructions for integrating Bridgecrew with the AWS account you're using. And one of the things we need to do is store the API key so that the Amazon Code Build environment can access that later. So we're going to copy this command, and we're going to go back to our Cloud9 IDE. And one of the benefits of using the Cloud9 IDE is the credentials for your AWS logon are already embedded in your terminal sessions in the Cloud9 IDE. So if I was running this locally, AWS might not know which account I'm using, my profile might not be set up. But if I run this command within the Cloud9 IDE, it's going to run as the context of the AWS account we're logged in as. So if we run that, that will, there we go. And what we've basically done is in AWS's system manager, we have created a secure secret, basically, which code build will be able to get to at a later date. The next thing we're going to need is, oh look, I've got text there. The next thing we're going to need is some configuration to tell code build pipeline what it is we want it to do. We want it to run the Bridgecrew CLI. And again, we have provided that automatically, and you can just click this link here to copy that all to your clipboard. We've provided the configuration, also known as a build spec.yaml, ready for the code build integration in AWS. So what we can do with this, also going back to the IDE, is if we click the little plus button up here, depending on how you've got your terminal set up, you might need to move the window down like I did. If we click this plus here and click new file, we can just paste that in there just so we have it available. Or again, you can just leave this tab open and copy it as we need it in just a moment. So now we have our secret stored, we can go ahead and build our code build project. Again, if you've got this open in a tab at bridgecrew.awsworkshop.io, everything you kind of need has a little copy to clipboard link next to it, so we can all be super lazy and not have to type a crazy amount of stuff out. So first of all, let's go and call our project Bridgecrew tutorial, as per the screenshots if you get stuck. And then because our source code is stored in GitHub, we're going to have to tell code build where our code is stored. So we'll select GitHub. And what we'll do here is we'll basically give code build permission to access our GitHub repo. So we'll do that by clicking connect to GitHub, confirm. This will go through the standard kind of GitHub OAuth flow and ask you for permission. If you haven't already granted it to another AWS environment, you might have a couple more fields to click through. And once that is a couple more pop-ups to click through, sorry, than I did, because I've already kind of done things in my AWS account to authenticate to GitHub for my Metahertz GitHub username. So you might have a couple more permission pages to go through, but those screenshots are available down here. So you might see some of those. And then once that's done, we should be able to click repository in my GitHub account, and we should be able to search for all the GitHub repos we have in our account. So you'll see that I can see my metahertz/cfngoat repo right there. So we'll click that, and that basically allows any builds we do with this build project to access and clone and get a copy of the current version in our source control. What we'll then do is, again, in the screenshots, if you need to go back through this or want to redo this on your own time, we'll select Ubuntu as our environment, or Amazon Linux too, doesn't really matter. What did I do in the instructions? Let's have a look. There we go. We selected Ubuntu in our environment. Basically all the defaults. Version 4, just to keep it consistent with the instruction screenshots. And then new service role is absolutely fine. Now at this point, you'll see build spec. Now this is asking, what should this build pipeline do? What instruction should it run? And this is where we can select insert build commands. We can click switch to editor. We can get rid of the default template that's there, and we can paste in either what we copied to our IDE, or if you still have the Bridgecrew integration page open, click copy from there. So we'll paste that in. And as you'll see in here, this is all fairly self-explanatory. We are basically saying that from the parameter store, we want to get that Bridgecrew API key secret that we saved in the command earlier. We're then doing pip3 install Bridgecrew. We're just automating what you would have done to run locally. And then we're passing the Bridgecrew API key that we're getting from earlier and automating the account ID and the repo ID so that if you run this against multiple Git repos, you'll get the right data to filter on in the Bridgecrew dashboard. And then at this point, we can click Create Build Project. Just going to check for Q&A. I think we're all good. Do send any questions, any other thoughts about CI/CD security, any niggling questions that you'd like to discuss. I'm sure Rob and Yaniv, I'd love to jump into some of the fun kind of cloudy IAC questions with us all on this session. Also, Peyton, I cannot see chat because I'm sharing my screen. So if there is anything in there, please do jump on and let me know.
I actually have a question for you.
Sure, fire away, Yaniv. Yeah.
So you mentioned CFNGoat and using CloudFormation to make this scan, but I'm a developer. I build a lot of CloudFormation templates, but I'm a big fan of Terraform, actually, for my infrastructure as code. I don't know, even though I work in AWS, I think Terraform is an awesome tool to provision AWS resources.
Sure.
Can I use Bridgecrew to scan Terraform in the same way that I do with CloudFormation?
You certainly can. I'm so glad you asked. I cannot believe we didn't even rehearse that one. That's an awesome question. So in the same way we have CFNGoat, we also have a repo called TerraGoat, and you can probably guess where this is going. My apologies. Live demo gods are not with me today, are they? So TerraGoat's exactly the same. We've taken a load of Terraform and purposely written it to be as vulnerable and breaking as many security standards as possible. So in the same way, just as a quick demo, if we go back to the Cloud9 IDE and we do a git clone of TerraGoat, and we run the same and we run the same Bridgecrew command against this to scan this for IAC issues, you'll notice here I'm just going to say -D to scan the whole directory rather than a single file. And also, just so that we have useful information in the dashboard, I'm going to call this TerraGoat as well. What this is going to do is exactly the same. It's going to do a full IAC scan of Terraform instead. And we should see a load of Terraform security advisories. So yeah, absolutely. And all the automation we're doing here, by default, the Bridgecrew CLI will look for any of our supported frameworks. You can actually tell it to only look for a specific framework with --help and passing a framework flag. But here you see a load of Terraform. We'll also go and retrieve Terraform modules for you automatically and scan those. So if your code is fine, but you're using a Terraform module, which has a vulnerability in it, we'll find those as well. So yeah, absolutely. And if you wanted to follow along with this and follow back through the workshop with Terraform, you definitely could do.
Cool. So just one last follow-up about this. Any other goats? So we have Terraform, we have CFN. Do we have anything else?
Yeah, so many goats. So we have TerraGoat, we have CFN goat. We also have a, give me 1 second. My mind has just gone absolutely blank. You put me on the spot there. We have one for, give me a sec. No, my mind really has gone blank there. Give me a sec. Let's use the power of having a terminal in front of me to sort this one out. So why is that not showing up? Yeah. We have TerraGoat, we have CFN.
I guess the only one that I'm really interested in, and that will be the last time I'm putting you on the spot here, Matt, is CDK, because I know that it's starting to get
Cloud Development Kit. For some reason, my mind kept throwing up SAM, and I have no idea why. We do not have a SAM goat yet, but yes, we have a CDK goat.
So many 3-letter acronyms.
Look at that. That's insane. GitHub search letting me down there. Yeah, CDK goat for your Cloud Development Kit. Exactly the same. Bit of a description and then a load of CDK. So yeah, that can be scanned as well.
Nice. All right.
No worries. And then also, again, because we provided our API key, just to round that off in our scan, if we go back into the Bridgecrew dashboard and incidents, we'll actually see in here, if we search instead of digging through them all, we have our TerraGoat repo there, so we can just filter on those and just see the Terraform specific issues, like specifying ECR tags, but they're not immutable, so anyone could change the version without you knowing. And again, we'll provide information and recommendations and history there as well. So let's, yeah, thanks very much for that, Rob. So let's see how we are doing on our code build. So we just created, and hopefully that's great because it gives people a moment to catch up if you were kind of following along or reading all the screenshots. As Rob mentioned, by the way, the accounts you've been provisioned with are going to last for 24 hours. So by all means, do kind of have a play with this later, kind of go through anything that you maybe had to skip over due to time constraints or me being British and talking too quickly. You know, the account is there at your disposal, so definitely make use of it. So what we have here is a fully created build project, which if we manually hit start the build, in fact, let's do that, is going to take the latest version of code from our Git repo and is going to automate the running of that Bridgecrew command. So while that's going, let's just get up to where we are in the workshop. So when I've clicked build, it's actually going to fail, and it's going to fail for a very simple reason. By default, the permissions with which code build runs don't have access to the secret we just created in the systems manager store. So if we actually look here Here we go, decrypted variables error message, access denied exception. So we don't have access to that API key that we stored in Systems Manager. And so we need to do one thing once, just to make sure the permissions for code build have access to that Systems Manager secret. And so we do this on page 5.3 for those following along later. So in IAM, what we can do is find the code build Bridgecrew tutorial service role. And again, everything is hyperlinked and copyable to make things nice and easy. So if we go into roles and find that. So we find this role. And so this is the role, the set of permissions with which code build runs its jobs. So what we need to do here is add an inline policy to allow it to access the tags in Systems Manager. So we'll find Systems Manager as the service. And this is just going to this is going to automatically build our IAM policy document for us. So we don't need to mess about. And then all we need is the get parameters. So get parameter and get parameters, just to be on the safe side. And what we're basically doing here is allowing Systems Manager access of type get parameters, just so it can retrieve those parameters we've stored. And then next, we don't want to give it all parameters in System Manager. You know, least security, least access possible is generally preferred. So what we do here is we click Add ARN, and we give it the ARN, the resource ID of the secret that we stored. Now we can either do that by typing in the region we're using, the account we're using, and the name of the parameter, and it'll build the ARN, or we can actually just run another command down here to get the parameter, and as part of the parameter output in our IDE, we'll have that ARN that we can just copy straight in. So I've requested the ARN, sorry, I've requested the secret, and there's our ARN. So we can copy that, and we can go to our IAM management, and we can just paste that. Oh, my apologies. We can just paste that. Control A, delete, Control V, there we go, straight in there. And you'll see that populates all the relevant bits we care about. Once we've done that, we can click Review Policy. We can give it a name. I'm going to try and follow on with the instructions there. Copy and paste that name to save typing. And then there we go. We can see we've added the allow code build access to Bridgecrew secret policy into our IAM role, which code build uses. So now in code build, if we can see that failed. We saw the error earlier. If we start build, we should see that this one passes because it now has access to that secret and can successfully run the commands we told it to run. So I'm just going to close down some of these tabs here and make sure we're in the right place. Cool. So at this point, what we look at is code pipeline, and we're going to be watching the code build run while we're talking about this. So hopefully you're at this point. Again, the environment's available to you for 24 hours if you want to kind of do this again. But we can see in the command output, what we're seeing is it's installing Python, it's installing our Bridgecrew CLI. And as a developer, you wouldn't be watching this, but the concept is you set this up once and then it triggers every time you make a change to your repo. And potentially your code build and code pipeline combination are actually then going to gate running CloudFormation or running a Terraform apply to actually make changes to a real environment, depending on whether or not there's any of these issues flagged. So you can see here, we're seeing all of the issues we'd see on a local scan appearing like that. And we'll see that the build fails as a result because we don't want this to make it into production. You know, if there's vulnerable issues in the CloudFormation, we want to fail the build, which we have done. So the reason we're kind of looking at this here is what we'd actually do. Obviously, clicking build every time is just as bad as running the command locally. What we'd use is code pipeline, and code pipeline allows us to trigger automatically every time something changes in source control. So every time there's a new Git push, every time you merge a PR, every time you do anything in that Git repo, we can configure code pipeline to actually automatically trigger and basically push that build button for us. So code pipeline allows us to kind of string together multiple sections of code build and automate that based on an event. And one of those events is a new commit or a new push into a Git repo. So the reason we're not going to set this up, but you can by all means go through the instructions. If you're running in your own environment, go for it. The reason we're not going to set this up is it requires permissions in the event engine environment, which we don't currently have. So we can't integrate it with the Git repo. But the instructions are all there for you to carry along with. And you know, it's verbose enough that you will see what we're doing is we're connecting code pipeline to GitHub. And we're basically saying, if there is a change to this repo, we want you to trigger our code build. So manually clicking that build, automatically clicking that build button. And then the results you get at the end of that are exactly the same ones that we can now observe in code build anyway. So not only do we see failed, and not only do we see the output if you wanted to inspect that, but again, like everything else, that has updated our violations here in Bridgecrew, which gives us a much better view than that console output. And also lets us track over time. So if we go to our dashboard, you know, we can see we get some automatically generated graphs on changes over time. You can see the Terraform is now showing up the most common violation of policies, common policies via benchmark, and you know, the general health and status, so we can kind of track the status of those resources. Hey, Yaniv.
Me again. So
yeah, no worries.
It means there's a question coming up for me.
That's absolutely fine. I'm sorry. I think I called you Rob earlier, so you know, apologies.
No worries. Rob's a handsome fella. So just wanted to ask, you know, showing that dashboard kind of gets me intrigued. Being a DevOps person, can I send automatic notifications? Like if something happens, if there's a vulnerability, if I find something, can I integrate Bridgecrew, for example, into things like Slack or you know, any custom messaging? So there we go. I guess that's my answer.
You certainly can. Yeah, so just like we integrated other things, there's integration buttons for Slack notifications and a host of others to kind of allow you to do that. We're also working on some open APIs. So if you have a really kind of customized thing you want to do with some of like your internally written you know, management tools or some internally written kind of knock tools, we'll be able to interact with that as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, no worries at all. Just on the point actually of, you know, how does this tie into a developer, like a DevOps workflow? You know, there's a certain persona of person, I guess, if to your point, that is going to want the dashboard and is going to want the incidents in this type. As someone, you know, in a development team working in a DevOps kind of style, I'm just going to want to stay in my normal workflow. Like I'm going to want to stay where I'm committing my pull requests, where I'm approving those, where I'm seeing my CI/CD jobs run. So we're actually going to cover that. So I'd love to get your opinion on the next module where we kind of show how to kind of get that feedback onto the developer's eye line rather than switching between these items as well.
Cool. Yeah, sounds
cool.
good.
So as I was saying, the pipeline results, because it's just triggering the code build, we don't actually need to configure code pipeline to see those results. Not only can we see the results here, and they're also pushed to the dashboard as we've just shown. I'm just gonna, you always silence your phone nowadays, but not your watch. What is the technology world coming to? So we can not only see the kind of output here, not particularly nice to read, but if we go into report groups, the CLI also outputs much more readable format data. So if we have a look in here, we can see that we've outputted kind of JUnit style XML. So we can see kind of a nice at-a-glance summary of past and failed issues, and a much more readable list of the security violations found with the Bridgecrew scan. And again, if you wanted to go through it, you would see that at the end of the code pipeline, we end up exactly there looking at the same data. So that shows how we can automate, instead of each developer having to do the scan, we can automate that scan so that it happens whether or not the developer runs it as part of their CI/CD pipeline. And if you want it to, as you saw here, will actually fail the build and prevent that getting to production if there's security issues found in that infrastructure as code manifest. And as we covered with Yaniv, that manifest can be CloudFormation or Terraform, serverless framework, cloud development kit, Kubernetes manifests, Helm manifests, all kinds of infrastructure as code style manifests that the Bridgecrew CLI will find violations on. And if you are already kind of embedded in a different style of CI/CD solution, we have instructions here, which I'm not going to go through, but exactly the same, will get you to exactly the same point where those repos will be scanned and the data uploaded to Bridgecrew via GitHub Actions and on our website and via the integration page for a host of other CI/CD solutions. So it really will drop into kind of, not having to re-engineer your current environment and to gain really quick visibility of these security issues. I am not seeing any kind of chats pop up or any Q&A, so I will carry on. So that's all well and good, but talking about developers, as we've just kind of said, you're not really going to want to switch back and forward between dashboards. You're not going to kind of want to stare at 5 or 6 different GUIs a day, probably more than you already have to across like your Kanban boards and your Jira and whatever else you're using. So what we're going to do here is look at how we can automate fixing, and look at how we can actually get some of that information straight in front of the developer in the kind of pipeline tools they're already using, such as pull requests. Hey, do you have a question, Rob?
Oh, no, I was just following along here. Regarding your Bridgecrew subscription to code build, is that where you're supposed to be extracting the build commands?
Yeah, so the Bridgecrew subscription to code build basically provides, give me a second. It basically provides the system manager command to put the API key into something usable. And then this is providing a sample build spec configuration. So obviously, if you already have a build spec, you can, use, this will be familiar to you, and you can kind of use the phases needed as part of your existing workflow. Or as we've just seen, if you don't have any kind of code build set up at all, this works out of the box to give you scanning as the start of your pipeline.
Excellent. Judith, I hope that answers your question. Let us know if you're still having issues.
No worries. Okay, also it's worth mentioning while we happen to be here anyway, because Bridgecrew has noticed we've got data back from that code build environment, you actually see that in the code build integration section, this has gone green, and we can actually see the details of the account ID and the name of the code build job that we configured, so we can actually see the connectivity to Bridgecrew from the code build job is working. So how do we get things directly into the developer's eyeline? There's a few more things we can do, and as you can see, Bridgecrew has a whole host of integrations. So we're going to look at a couple of those a little more closely and show how they can just kind of help speed up automation for those DevOps teams. So the first thing we're going to do, and we've already kind of, as you can see, we've already kind of looked through the results in the platform and looked at the dashboard. So we are on 6.2 for those following along in the workshop pages. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at another integration, and that integration is with GitHub directly. So what we can do here is allow us to kind of, instead of just taking data from a code base via a CI/CD pipeline that was stored in GitHub, we can actually push data back as well, and you'll see why that's beneficial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the GitHub integration, click authorize, and click authorize here. And what this is going to ask me for is permission to allow the Bridgecrew app to access my GitHub organization. Now, again, I've already enabled this. You are more likely, if this is the first time you've enabled this, to see this flow here, where you click configure and it will ask for permissions instead of asking you to configure. So once you've done that, you will effectively, there we go, we can save that, yeah. I'm just going to remove this from a previous demo account so we can go through this properly. There we go. So this is what you'll get. You'll get install and authorize Bridgecrew, which will give us permission to access the repos in kind of a more bi-directional way, as you'll see in the demo. And then this is what you'll get redirected back to. You'll get redirected back to Bridgecrew, and it'll ask which repositories you want to scan. And so what we're going to do here in true workshop style is just pick the CFN goat. And why not? Let's do TerraGoat that we've been doing as well. And so we'll click done. And there we go. We can now see we have another green integration configured so that we have GitHub integration. And yeah, there we go. It just took a moment to update, but this is basically now integrated with the CFN goat fork I created in my account and the TerraGoat fork I had as well.
Excellent. Matt, I have another question for you.
Sure.
Azuna asks, does Bridgecrew scan Docker files as well?
We don't currently scan Docker files, no, but we do scan Kubernetes manifests.
Excellent.
If there is a, like, we are actually discussing Docker Compose through way of things like ECS, especially with kind of the announcements of ECS Anywhere and things like that. So please do come and give us your thoughts on that. We have a Slack community at slack.bridgecrew.io called Codified Security. If they'd like to contribute a suggestion, we'd love that, or just email me, matt@bridgecrew.io. Yeah, it'd be great to have that conversation.
Excellent, thanks.
No worries. Okay, so once we've configured Bridgecrew and we've got that green integration, this will now automatically scan the code in that GitHub environment and return the results into Bridgecrew without needing that CI/CD pipeline. Now, I say without needing that CI/CD pipeline, and if you've already read through the workshop, this is going to be a massive spoiler because it's covered a little bit later. But it's actually really important to have multiple points of checks for any security tests. So just because we can now check the code in GitHub, without the CI/CD pipeline integration, how do you know whether that's code that is just sat there in GitHub for archiving purposes? How do you know whether it's code that actually needs to actually ever gets deployed? How do you know whether it has been deployed? So, you know, defense in depth is really good in this scenario. So the integration here allows us to see the code as it lays dormant in the repo. We then have the CI/CD check where we can see it as it kind of progresses through your build pipeline and into production. And in the platform, we actually highlight these separately. We don't just go, that's the same repo and that's the same violation. So what we actually do in here is we will show you kind of the same issue multiple times, which allows you to see that, okay, well, it's failing in GitHub and it's also trying to be pushed via CI/CD and the violation is still failing there. And the reason we do that is just because something has been fixed in the kind of manifests in source control doesn't necessarily mean if it was previously deployed, it's been fixed in production. So you do want to see that fix and that violation go away and be marked as remediated or marked as fixed. You do want to see that not only happen in your source control, but you also want to see that going through your CI/CD system and fixing that issue in production if it was already deployed. So in here, if we look at this, we can see that we have a few more items here. So we can see that we have the two I scanned originally, CFN-goat and Terragoat from the CLI. And then we also see we have some things appearing from the GitHub integration here as well. And again, you can kind of filter down on any of those or all of those. Any AWS account stuff comes with an AWS ID as well. And that's coming from our CI/CD pipeline. So we can see which ones of these by hiding those are coming from our pipeline. None, because we're currently looking at something Terraform. So let's just quickly look at CFN instead. Let's hide the Terraform stuff. And let's pick something like this. And here you can see we've got a lot of resources. We can see CFN-goat coming from the original CLI scan. We can see CFN-goat, the same issues that have been through the CI/CD pipeline, Bridgecrew tutorial in code build, and we can also see the scan directly for GitHub. So obviously, if someone fixes something in GitHub but doesn't push it to production, this violation will go away, but this one won't, and that gives you a realistic view of what is and isn't kind of secure in your environment. Okay, I'm just going to close some of these down to try and keep my tabs tidy, which is not something I'm good at doing in normal day-to-day life. Okay, perfect. So we've just seen the same violation alerting from two sources, and we've explained why that's important. So the next exciting thing, like I said, with the two-way integration of source control, in this case using GitHub, is we can now automate making developers' life easier. So it's all well and good knowing that these are problems, but what are we going to do about them? So now we have that kind of two-way control, and we wouldn't want to edit code on the fly in a CI/CD pipeline because then you lose visibility of what's changed. What you want to do is do that from somewhere that has trackable change control, so source control. So if we look at these issues, for example, in source control, we can actually see when we click on one, not only are we giving advice, but because this is coming from source control, we're even giving a recommended diff, a recommended change as to how we would actually fix this issue. So you can see the issue itself is the bucket needs to have restrict public enabled. As you know, a good security practice. So we're saying that in this particular piece of CloudFormation, for the operations bucket, we should add these two fields to do that. And to do that, we can simply click that and click fix. And what this will do is this will, in true kind of DevOps workflow style, this will raise a PR against our repo. Here we go. And if we refresh this, we'll see that we have a pull request. So not only is this pull request automatically created for us, it's created with the change we need, but it also comes for the development team. Again, think of Bridgecrew as like your virtual security employee on your DevOps team, trying to kind of bring some automated like DevSecOps magic. You can see that this has basically given us some context written up a really useful piece of information, provides us detail and guideline links to some of the information in the platform to get some context around why the change. And we can see that the change itself is what we saw in the UI. So what we can do is go ahead and merge that pull request to fix that issue in source control. And then not only is that merged, so the Git integration will notice it, but if we'd configured code pipeline, and I'm going to go and just do this myself, code pipeline would have noticed that change and it would have automatically kicked off a new code build. And so if we look at 28 and 47 and we go back to code build, this would have automatically effectively clicked on start new build here. And that build would have checked out the latest copy, including the commit for that pull request, and it would have run through that scan again. So what we're going to see is, for what we've just fixed here, can we remember what we just fixed? It was the operational bucket, right? So we can see that the operations bucket here is still showing violations, but the operational bucket for GitHub has gone because we have already merged that. And so this is what I was saying about tracking that fix all the way to production. So once this CI/CD scan runs in code build and uploads this data to Bridgecrew, we'll also see this problem this open violation will show remediated as well. And then in future, anyone going and finding this resource directly via the resource inventory, which shows all resources we can find regardless of their violation status, with certain filters to find the ones you want. If someone went and directly found that resource, it would show the time and date as to when it was remediated, as you can see kind of down here with the resource history. So while we wait for that to run, I mean, it will still fail, obviously, because there's lots of other security violations, because CFNGO is designed to be insecure. But once that's run, this will get updated with the latest information. And we can see there in the group belonging to our CI/CD that because that's now gone through CI/CD and passed, that operations bucket has also disappeared from being an active violation, which is what we wanted to see. So you can see there 2 stages. The third stage, which we're going to leave you guys and girls on today, is, well, that's all well and good, but what about brownfield? What about items that are already running in my environment that we haven't had time to move into Terraform or CloudFormation? We haven't had time to codify, or just things that were there from kind of previous generations of the product, which we still need, or we're just not ready to codify them yet. How do we know what's going on with those? And for that, we have runtime integration. So this is directly connecting to your AWS account and actually looking at the same policies that we look at for infrastructure as code, but against the actual cloud resources themselves. And so to integrate this, once again, you've guessed it, we go to the integrations tab. And then for cloud providers, we go read only. Now, just like we can automatically change things, as you just saw with pull requests in infrastructure as code, we do offer a remediation stack, which would give permissions in your AWS account to actually click fix within the Bridgecrew dashboard, just like we saw with the pull request. But by default, we recommend AWS read-only. And there's 2 reasons for that. Read-only has the smallest scoped permissions possible within your AWS account, so that we can, just use as, a really, really small IAM policy with just the permissions needed to validate these security issues. And also, we still mandate that infrastructure as code is the best way to be managing and tracking the life cycle of your resources. So making a change directly to an AWS resource, while it might be a necessary solution to kind of quickly fix a rather big security issue. Personally, I'd much more recommend kind of trying to move those things into CloudFormation, Terraform, and making sure that you can then track the state changes via IAC. So if we launch Stack, this integration actually directly links over to your AWS account and uses CloudFormation to basically create the needed IAM role, which will give Bridgecrew the ability to kind of scan your resources. So what we'll see here is this will get created. And then once that's created, we'll see another kind of green integration section in this AWS read-only integration. Now, because this is a brand new account, there probably isn't going to be very much to show in here because we've not actually deployed any vulnerable resources. But I just kind of wanted to highlight that that completes what I was talking about when we were saying multiple violations shown by multiple different integrations within the Bridgecrew platform. So you have the scanning in GitHub, you then have knowing it's going through and blocking the CI/CD pipeline if there's violations, but then you also have the knowledge that anything that wasn't deployed via IAC at the very end will also be picked up and showed in that list of violations or sent to Slack or sent to, you know, wherever your integrations are going. Hey, Yaniv, another question?
Yes, we have a question in the chat, which is there a Bitbucket integration for Bridgecrew? And I'm also going to expand on that. Can you integrate with other sources other than GitHub, like GitLab, Bitbucket, or anything else?
Yep, absolutely. So while we're on the integrations page, as you can see here in source control, GitHub, GitHub Enterprise, GitLab, GitLab Self-Managed, Bitbucket. Also, as well as kind of the kind of instructions we have for CI/CD tools here, the API token and the fact that we build that pip binary, and also we have a Docker container for download as well, actually allows you to use that binary with the BC API key in pretty much any pipeline that you can run a Python command or a Docker container or anything like that. So, you know, definitely reach out to us again, matt@bridgecrew.io, or join our Slack at slack.bridgecrew.io. Come and talk to us about those demands. Chances are we'll already have someone running that environment. It might not be enough customers to warrant, you know, a dedicated kind of integration and all the support that goes around that. But in terms of actually fitting it into your CI/CD pipeline, yeah, absolutely.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Yaniv. So yeah, what we'll now see, again, may see or may not, depending on, it's a very empty account. But if we go into here, we'll see that we have our account ID listed. So that is from our code pipeline integration. These are all from either our GitHub or our you know, local CLI. And then this is an account ID for AWS. You can actually, in the integration, give these a friendly name within the Bridgecrew platform, which will show on your kind of alert integrations or kind of Slack integrations if you don't want it to just be the account name. And what we can do is we can see what we see from here. So, for example, the brand new accounts, they've not gone through any kind of hardening. So we do see a few basic kind of suggestions around monitoring. So, for example, a log and metric filter alarm exists for unauthorized API calls against that live account. That's a very good idea. You know, let's make sure that if there are CloudTrail events for unauthorized accounts, someone is knowing about them. Now, event engine accounts, not a big deal. Production accounts, yeah, just kind of belt and braces, security setup. The default VPC is being used again because it's a demo account. But yeah, that's rather helpfully given us some good suggestions there. And then, as we kind of already said, and again, you can just see that these are screenshots for anyone following along offline as to everything we've just shown. As we've just said, there's also the remediation integration, which will ask you for more permissions in your AWS account, but then allows us to automatically fix things and change things in your AWS account like you saw with the GitHub integration. And that is where I'm going to leave you all. Please do kind of any questions, find me at MetaHertz or at Bridgecrew.io on Twitter. Feel free to go back through the workshop at bridgecrew.awsworkshop.io. And again, thanks to Rob and Yaniv for providing those and just being generally awesome for our workshop today. And yeah, join our Slack at slack.bridgecrew.io if you want to discuss any of the providers or anything else, or just kind of deep dive into any of these topics. And thank you very much for joining.